Good afternoon, and sorry for that. Welcome to Bumdraft and Pray podcast. Um, and today we have the Dutch GP review with myself and my good friend, our resident former racing driver, Mr. Earl Goddard.
Hello, mate. How are we?
Yeah, we're very good. So we have our second race of the triple header, and we were all wondering from last week how it was going to go because we had such a dominant display by Mr. Max Verstappen and Red Bull, and we arrive at a very different kind of track. And from the beginning, from the first practice, we had all sorts of promising performances by our friends at Mercedes to start with, and then Ferrari. And it continues all the way through practice like that. At this time, were you convinced about it being like a Mercedes or a Ferrari kind of track, and then that Red Bull would be a little bit in trouble?
I don't know about in trouble. I think, it definitely suited Mercedes, and they seem to have hit the ground running in practice, George particularly. Ferrari, you just don't know with them at the minute. Leclerc can go fastest, and then they can be 2 seconds off the pace. So I sort of don't discount them, but don't worry too much about them until you get to quali in the race, because, like you say, I know Max had a few issues, but at no point was it, oh, hold on, I think he's that in trouble. So I think business is normal. I was like,
Yeah, I think the most worrying thing about them was they had a little bit of reliability problems with the gearbox, and I had to. I actually answered to a Facebook comment on another community because they were really making it sound like Red Bull were cheating by cracking open a seal on the gearbox, like this was your local car track, and the FIA would say nothing about it and wouldn't be present in the room when they broke that seal and had to replace it. So, yeah, I guess this is I read somewhere that this was really the first. I think it's Max hasn't swapped gearboxes this season. I don't know if that's really true, but I read it somewhere. But it's just like they were really not fussed about it.
Yeah, they didn't seem to, in any of the interviews, they didn't seem too panicked, did they? It was unfortunate and a bit of a bump in the road, but we'll go out again and keep plodding on. And I wasn't too worried about that.
Yeah, when you have that many championship points ahead, normally you don't need to worry that much about one gearbox. But anyway, moving on from practice, so we had kind of a mix-up because we had Mercedes, we had Ferrari in front. It seemed to be very... and Red Bull actually pace-wise seemed to be a little bit more towards the back of that group. But then we came to qualifying, and I'm not going to give the impression that it was another Spa, but when we came to the qualifying, it seemed to normalize a little bit more than it seemed in practice. So in Q1 Bottas, Ricardo, and we have to talk about it later.
Yeah.
Because it's starting to be a little bit scary, to be honest. Magnussen, Vettel, and Lafiti. And another one that we might discuss is Mr. Kevin Magnussen as well. Because it's actually, I just noticed it now that there are very similar parallels right now. Not that we think that Vettel is that that Magnussen is as in trouble as Mr. Ricardo, but yeah, their qualifying was not what we think they can bring to the table.
No, definitely not. Well, where you think where Mick ended up?
Yeah, Mick ended up P8.
Exactly. So say no more.
Yeah, when you have Norris P7, Ricardo P17, and Mick P8, and Magnussen P18. Yeah, there's some bells starting to go off and ring a little bit, and we actually talked about this when we did the first half of the season recap. Mick seems to finally starting to get to grips with the car, and sometimes even seemingly have the measure on Magnussen, at least at this point of the championship.
Yeah, whether it's previous track knowledge coming back into tracks, or just the fact, like you say, he's also on the cusp. He has to prove to them that he's worthy to stay there. Just because your name's Schumacher doesn't mean you get the seat. So I think he's just upped his game that little bit after the break. Magnussen, don't know what's going on there because he's clearly been a top 6 runner before. So where's the lack of pace all of a sudden?
Yeah, he seemed to, at least in the first half of the season, seemed to be able to drive around some of the car's problems and some of the car's lack of pace, because they didn't give him any updates very like almost in the middle of the season. They ended up in the middle of the season with the same car as in the start. They didn't bring any little upgrades, but then it all seemed to start to go wrong for Kevin, and Mick seemed to pick up the pace a bit and pick up the fight a little bit and be more in towards where he needs to be to prove to Haas that he's a worthy driver, and then he tells them to bye-bye.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about the news.
In a bit.
Maybe in the end of the review, we'll talk a little bit about the dancing chairs, but now really chairs, not chairs, but seats, the dancing seats that we have going on. So Q2, the drivers that were eliminated in Q2 were Gasly, Ocon, Alonso, Guan Yu Zhou, and Mr. Albon. So again, Mr. Guan Yu Zhou out qualifies Bottas. That's another driver that it seems to have a little bit of fight in him yet, considering that his seat is not confirmed for next year, and that may come into the conversation a little bit later. And the team that disappointed me the most on qualifying, at least, was Alpine. We had Ocon and Alonso at P12 and P13. I may or may have not nodded a little bit on the qualifying and qualifying 2, and when I started seeing qualifying 1 and I didn't see 2 Alpines, then I went back and saw it because I couldn't believe it. So yeah, we had the 2 Frenchmen out. We had Albon qualifying again, passing to Q2 at least, not Q3 like Spa, but this track wasn't really catered to the Williams
No.
few strengths.
When you look where Lafiti is, he's 2.5 seconds ahead of Lafiti. So he's in the mix with the bigger teams. I think, again, doing what he's done most season is getting the maximum out of the car, probably more than the maximum.
Yeah, he seems to have found something in his driving that allows him to really have better performances than Lafiti. Not that we think Lafiti is the next Schumacher, but yeah, it's 2.5 seconds towards a teammate seems a little bit excessive.
I say nothing.
Yeah. So, and then we get to Q3. So, let's paint a picture here because it was actually interesting. We had fighting until the end of Q3. And Q3 started with the Mercedes doing well, the Ferraris doing well. Verstappen was P3, if I'm not mistaken, before the last run.
Yeah, after the first lot of runs.
Yeah, the first lot of runs. And then Leclerc seemed to have everything under control because it was P1 from the first ones. They both, the Verstappen, I don't think Paris was able to, but both Verstappen and the two Ferraris were able to have two entire fresh sets of softs. And when we got to the last run, we had Leclerc, then Max was behind him, and then Sainz, if I'm not mistaken, Perez, and then the rest of the guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed to be all under control for Leclerc because he had the fastest time and he actually did a better first sector than before. Just when we thought that the times couldn't go down, he did a mega first sector, and it was one of those interesting end of qualifyings that we were all looking at the sector times and comparing sectors and trying to figure out, because it's not always straightforward to look at the green, purple, and yellow sector times, because it's always compared to himself. Only the purple is compared to everyone else, but like if Max does a green sector, it doesn't mean that it's better or worse than the guys behind him. So it's a little bit strange. You have to really keep an eye on the way things go. So yeah, then Leclerc did a little mistake on sector 2, and I think everyone thinks that was what basically
lost him.
The pole position, because it was very close. In the end, Verstappen got pole with a 110.342, and Leclerc got a 110.363. And actually, Sainz was only 1/10 behind Verstappen.
Yeah,
so
top three all in a tenth of each other, which I don't think we were expecting that.
Not really. So yeah, that second sector time was the one that. So I have one technical question. I don't know if you know the answer. Can they change the setup from Q2 to Q3, or it's Parc Fermé rules?
I think they have limited stuff they can change. They wouldn't be doing any drastic changes then. It'd be small wing adjustments, roll bar stuff, or more than likely it would be driver adjusting something with the HUD on the dash to do with diff settings.
Yeah, because it seemed to the points where the car was the points on the track that the car seemed to be competitive seemed to change a little bit from Q2 to Q3.
But then that could be Max deliberately not pushing as hard in sector 1 to save the tyre life to use it in sector 2 and 3. So the give too much in the first, like Leclerc went everything in the first sector, second sector, and then the tyres were screaming for death at the end and maybe lost a little bit of more performance, where Max went, well, don't use it all at the beginning and save a bit more performance for part of the track I'm stronger in. Hence why he had that massive middle sector.
Yeah. So basically, our top 10 was Verstappen P1, Leclerc P2, Sainz P3. Oh, I forgot to tell. Just after Sainz, it came Perez, and Perez had a spin in not
Final
the last
corner,
but the one before, like the straight before.
Like, yeah, going into the final corner, didn't he?
Yeah, and that basically ruined the laps for everyone else. So Hamilton didn't have his second run, nor did Russell. That were two drivers that could at least try and fight for something. So P4 Hamilton, P5 Perez, P6 Russell, P7 Norris, P8 Schumacher. Both Norris and Schumacher having a very good qualifying. Actually, the bottom four all of them had a good qualifying session, because it was Norris, Schumacher, Tsunoda, and Stroll. All of them, the only guys on top 10 to be without a teammate in the top 10.
And Stroll obviously didn't take part in Q3 due to a technical issue, I believe they found with the car.
Yeah, and Stroll actually seemed to be very, very fast on qualifying day, and even on Sunday he seemed to have...
Yeah, he had a good weekend.
Yeah, he had a very good weekend. So yeah, it was another from those four. Stroll was P9, P10, and Vettel was P19. I mean, they were Norris,
seems
Schumacher,
to be a lot
and
of that.
Stroll. Yeah, seems to be a lot of but
one teammate doing really well and the other noticeably different.
Yeah. So yeah, from here we go into the race. This time we had no penalties. Stroll had a little bit of a technical problem in qualifying, but they were able to solve it without getting any penalties. So we start off like this, and let's go to the race start. As I remember it, they all had pretty much a standard race start. I only think that maybe it was Sainz that didn't have a good start, wasn't it? Then it was a little bit and caused a little bit of mayhem into turn one. If I'm not mistaken.
I think combination Sainz didn't get the best. He got a normal start, and Hamilton got slightly better and was able to get in there and put a bit of pressure on him, and lost the back end a bit in first corner. They made contact, but ever so slightly.
Yeah, it was basically nothing.
Enough to just sort of stall the pack with everyone coming around them. And then noticeably, I think the best start from my point of view was Lando, who was suitably aggressive, but I think he made up a couple of spaces.
He made up one space because Russell, I think at least in the start, the outside line on T1 seemed to have a lot of grip, and Norris was able to capitalize on that and passed Russell. Basically, it was that. So, and at this time, they like the first, let's call it 7, because Norris was in the mix as well. All of them had soft tires apart from the 2 Mercedes and Norris. So that were on mediums. So Norris and the 2 Mercedes started on mediums, and the rest of the guys were on softs. So yeah, it was actually a little
Looking
bit,
good for Mercedes at that
yeah,
point.
looking very good. At least because Hamilton had a very good start and was able to just go away with the Ferraris. Russell lost one place, but it was to another medium guy, so it was to Norris. So there, the mediums might not have been that much of an influence. So yeah, then it was a straightforward first lap. I don't think that uh, there were not any big incidents, nothing like that. We didn't have anything like Spa, so it was a straightforward. And then the only thing that happened for a bit was that on lap 2, Magnussen seemed to lose it a little bit on the outside of the T1. I don't know if you saw that, but he went to the gravel and actually touched the barriers quite hard on the outside, but the car didn't break, man. This car seemed to be made of some special stuff that they can just bang wheels against the tire walls and they just go on without any problems.
Yeah, he got some snap oversteer coming out through the right-hander before the camber, the bowl corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an unlucky one. But yeah, he was very lucky to get away with it because any other day that would have been a wheel hanging off.
Yeah. So yeah, we had that, and from this time, the only note I have here that anything to talk about was that Russell made an interesting comment really in the first couple of laps of the race. He was able to pass Lando, and his message through the radio was track very green is going to rubber up. And I think that actually made a lot of like previewed a little bit what was going to happen with in the rest of the race, with the track in the rest of the race. So the both Mercedes seemed to be fast because both of them were going into the Ferraris that they were in front. So at this time we had Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton. Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton, Sainz, and then Russell.
Cool.
No, no, I think Perez actually passed Sainz. So Sainz lost a couple of places. So it was Verstappen, Leclerc. Now I'm confused because he was behind. No, he was behind Perez. Yeah, that's right. So we had Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton, Sainz, Perez, and Russell. And Russell seemed to be closing into Perez. So both Mercedes seemed to have something in the bag at least. And with mediums, and that was the part that impressed me the most at this time. But then we get to lap 8, and my note for lap 8 is boring. So, yeah, while they were all pretty close to each other, it seemed to be a little bit of a snooze fest at this point. And we actually had the first overtake of the race, apart from the first lap, was on lap 10. So we had 9 laps without anyone making a move. And
it was what we sort of feared though with this track is it's not very, this one passing place really. And yes, they extended the DRS zone which made it easier. I think if they hadn't have done, we wouldn't have seen much overtaking.
Yeah, and the only overtake we had was Alonso and Gasly, and that's outside the top 10. So yeah, it didn't look very good, to be honest. And at this time, I thought it was interesting, but it turned out the way the race then developed, it turned out not to be relevant. But Alonso pitted on lap 12 for hards. So I was a little bit thinking, does he think that he can go from lap 12 to 77 laps? I think it was a race on just a set of hards. But yeah, it didn't seem to be all that great racing, to be honest. It was one of those races that you have stops and you're waiting for something to happen and someone to have a problem with the tires. It seemed a little bit.
Yeah, but then Alonso did have good pace on the hards when he did get him up to temp. He was running well, which I think gave a little bit of information to the other teams, because then I think they also brought Ocon in and put him on hards as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think Alpine had one of the better performances of the weekend. And Alonso particularly, while we're talking about him, he seems to have found something, whether it be a setting. He's very comfortable in that car and extracting everything. So, and Ocon's obviously not slow either. So I was quite impressed with them as a whole.
Yeah. The Alpines seemed to be the team that had the better strategy, or the ones that were able to at least make the most out of strategy, because they were not really fast in the qualifying, but in the race they were going forwards and always on the right tire, let's say. So at this time, basically everyone pits on the top 6, 7, and everyone goes to the mediums. Apart from the Mercedes were the only two cars that sailed a little bit more. They were on the mediums, but even Norris stopped for the hards at the same time that Charles did. So at this time, I started to think, it's not the first race that I think that, but that McLaren seems not to be very good on tires. It seems to be a little bit chewing the tires a little bit more than the other cars around them. So yeah, I even have a note at lap 21 that Mercedes are going very well with more than 21 laps old tires, because they did qualifying 2 with them. So maybe 23 laps, they were going very long and very well. And I actually noticed that Lando had loads of porpoising on the main straight. I don't know what that's on about, but it was even more than Mercedes. I seem to notice. This weekend they seem to have loads of porpoising.
Just running the car low to maximize. If they're obviously struggling for performance somewhere, so the easy performance is drop the car, but have to put up with the porpoising. So it could be as simple as that.
Yeah. So at this time, Max is behind. He already stopped and is behind both Mercedes. And actually, on lap, I think it was on lap 26 or something like that, his engineer just told him, now go ahead and let's catch up the Mercedes. So we seem to be on the mediums after having stopped once, trying to nurse the tires. I don't know if they thought it could go until the end of the race because he stopped on lap 18 on a set of mediums. I don't think so. But they seem to be trying to extend the life of his tires because, yeah, the Mercedes looked mighty. But then...
Yeah, it was very strange.
Yeah, the hards seem to be the right tire for this weekend, to be honest.
I think that was the bit, is they didn't have much experience on them or much running on them, and after the last week, so surprising. But yeah, I mean, all you had to do is look at Alonso and anyone that put the hards on, they were flying comparatively.
Yeah. But then his engineer says basically, go on, you can use the tires a little bit, and 1 or 2 laps later he was on the back of Russell and passed him into T1. This was on lap 28. And then immediately 1 lap after that, Lewis stopped for the hards. So they were actually seeing what was going on. So at this point, and seemingly almost all of the race, Russell was basically managing a gap to Lewis. It seemed a little bit, because he was always 3 seconds behind Lewis. I don't know if you noticed that, but it was since they were brought together by all the other cars pitting, he was always 3 seconds, 3.1, 3.2, 3 seconds behind Lewis. So that was interesting and a good omen for the rest of the race. So it was Lewis stopped lap 29, and then Russell did 2 more laps and stopped lap 31. So at this time, all of them had pitted. Verstappen was in front, behind Leclerc. Leclerc and the Ferrari seemed to be going backwards. And if not backwards, they were on 3 wheels. Because that was the first, let's say, I'm trying to think on a nice
way to say it.
a nice way to say it, but when they stopped Carlos, they forgot to bring 1 wheel out, and he was stopped for 12 seconds instead of being stopped for 3.
You can see in the replay that the left rear tyre guy is at the front of the car, and he can't get through all the other people to get to where he needs to be, because he's obviously late coming out, and he can't go round the outside in the pit lane. So all of a sudden, there's 20 odd people in a car in his way, and he's trying to dance over everything. So just poor from, well, as we've become used to now with Ferrari, just silly mistakes that inevitably have cost them a championship.
Yeah, I didn't notice that part that it came out. I thought that they really forgot to take 1 wheel and bring it from the...
I saw it on the replay. When you look at it again, you can see them run out, and he sort of runs out the wrong garage door, essentially. So he's at the front of the car and not the back. And all of a sudden, there's too much real estate in the way of him to try and get through it. Unfortunate, but again, should know better.
Yeah, so maybe they made the call too late, and they were all coming out, and when they, in a normal way of getting out, they have time for the car to... They are basically there waiting for him, but they called it way late, and then he had to go the other way around, and he didn't, basically.
He would normally be able to walk over where the car is to get to the left rear, and all of a sudden there was a car there. So, I mean, he could have tried climbing over it.
Yeah, that would be a good spectacle to watch. But yeah. So, and that basically ruined just a little bit Carlos' race. It was going to be... Yeah. It was going to get worse, but we'll get to it. And actually on that stop, Perez ran over one of the wheel guns of Ferrari. So yeah, they had to change it for the next pit stops, because he ruined it. So at this time, we had basically Max, Charles, and then Perez, I think, was still in front of the other guys. Sainz was way back because of the error. And then we had Lewis and Russell. And at this time, I have here a note that says Paris Minister of Defense again, because he put on a good fight to Hamilton. At this time, both Hamilton and Russell were basically coming out with fastest laps of the race, and Paris like fought Lewis like it was for the World Championship. It seemed.
Yeah, like a good number 2 should.
Yeah. So yeah, and when eventually Lewis passed Perez, we had a bit of a, let's say, misunderstanding, to be polite about it. But Vettel was coming out of the pits, and he was one lap behind, so he was being lapped by both Lewis and Perez, and he actually got in the way of both of them, and almost giving a chance of Perez to retake the position to Lewis. So yeah, he got a penalty for that. And then just a couple of laps later, Russell passed Perez at the first opportunity he had. And Lewis did a 1:15.1 fastest lap at the time, and it seemed to be like one of those that would stay how wrong we were. And I don't know what to feel about, but I actually put a note here at lap 40 that like Max needs to stop, basically. Did you have the feeling when you saw Lewis coming up to Max? It was a little bit, it was like 17 seconds behind, but it seemed that the longer that Red Bull were going to leave Max out, the worse it seemed.
Worse it was going to be. Yeah. It did, yeah. It did seem like they were, like you say, the longer they kept him going, it was just going to make the end of the race a lot more difficult for him.
Yeah. At this point, he had to stop because he was on mediums that were not going to last 60 laps.
Yeah.
And he was, at this point, he was going to be behind at least Hamilton. So if they even took 1 or 2 laps, he was going to be behind Russell as well.
Yeah.
When he pitted. So it seemed a little bit odd that they were. I almost thought they are doing a Ferrari by leaving their driver out in the cold to fend off himself and then give him the worst strategy. So yeah, they stopped Perez for hard, and he immediately did the fastest lap of the race. But yeah, then on lap 44, we had one of the strangest moments of the season so far in a race, which was Tsunoda stopped just after the first banked corner, so T4.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
T1, T2, T3, T4. Yeah, T4 just after that, and basically gave a call to the pit saying tires are not fitted properly, and it caused some confusion. At this time, everyone thought the same: virtual safety car, at least, if not full safety car. And Verstappen has like basically a free pit stop at this time, but the team told them tires are okay. So at this time, I think, at least I talk for myself, it was one of those cases that what's going on here, because it's strange that a driver feels that the tires are not fitted properly, and the team tells them, yeah, that everything's fine.
He's definitely felt something, and has obviously panicked. What he's felt, I don't know. I mean, it could be a multitude of things. But for the team to go, no, tyres are fine, the wheels are tight, you're good to go. And then I believe he came into the pits, they sent him out again, and then he stopped again, didn't he?
So he came to the pits. He went off, but really slowly. He came to the pits because he already started to undo his belts. So
To get out, yeah.
Yeah, to get out of the car, but because they told him to go, he went and he came to the pits so that they fitted the belts properly. It's not like a road car that you can do it all of that by yourself easily. So, or even driving a Formula One car at whatever, even if you're going slow, you're going way faster than you go on your street car. So, it's hard. But then they sent him out, and he just went out, and it was like, what's going on? And he didn't feel it good. And he actually said to the team, I see smoke coming out of the diff. So, and they told him to stop, and then he stopped basically on the same place that he was before.
Yeah.
And it was one of those, it was really the front diff that was cooked basically. So I think he didn't have any feeling on the wheel, like he was basically turning the wheel and it was doing anything until a certain point. So that's what he felt basically. So in the meantime, before Tsunoda stops again, Ferrari stopped Charles for hards because they thought, okay, there's not going to be a virtual safety car, so let's stop him. And immediately after he comes out, Tsunoda stops on track, and we have a virtual safety car, which prompts everyone to stop. So Norris stops for softs, Alonso for softs, that I thought was a little bit soon, but yeah, they were able to make that happen. Max stops for hards. And then what I didn't expect was both Lewis and Russell stopped for mediums. What's on about that? Yeah, that was strange for me. I didn't really understand why they stopped them and for mediums.
Well, we know the Mercedes is a lot easier on its tyres due to its design, which is why they struggle with tyre warm up and everything, because it's so gentle on the tyres, and they obviously felt that they could be on a more optimum tyre and still get the laps out of it, whereas everyone else was having to go to the hard get both. So it was I wasn't surprised, and also you've got to do something strategy wise. They have to try something, otherwise they're never going to win a race this year.
Yeah, for me it just seemed that there was too much time to the end of the race, and that it was going to level out the performance versus the life of the tires with Verstappen, and that way they weren't going. They didn't have track position, and they didn't have tires that would be lasting that well until the end. So for me it looked a little bit strange, but yeah, I get what you mean, and we have to realize that at this time the cars are way with less fuel. So with less fuel comes less weight. With less weight comes less stress on the tires. So they last much longer than they did on the start of the race. So yeah, and the Mercedes actually seemed very good, at good pace and good wear in the start of the race. So yeah, there's a mix of what could happen from now. So basically when we came out of VSC, so virtual safety car, in lap 50, we had Max 12 seconds behind Lewis, 3 seconds, that's it all, Russell behind, and then Charles was actually 5.4 seconds behind Russell. So basically Charles was off of the picture at this point, even for a podium, because the Ferrari seemed to be slow anyway. I just got that feeling.
Agree with that.
So yeah, from this time on, like, It was Russell and Alonso trading fastest laps. Alonso maybe because he had the softs on, and that initial part he seemed to be very fast, and he even passed Norris at the point. So the strategy was really working for them there. Then Lewis started to pick up the pace, and it was at this time that we started to go on to the 13th pace wise. And then I have to turn to the other page. I have so many pages of notes this race, just for the last part of the race. Then on lap 55, we have the other gift to Red Bull. I mean, they had the pace, I think, to win the race outright. I'm not going to suggest, like some people on the internet, that if it wasn't for the safety cars that they would be nowhere. But this was another one, because Bottas stopped on the main straight on lap 55. And I guess everyone thought the same thing, and that's what happened. That was a full-on safety car. So no virtual safety car, but full-on safety car. I still don't know what happened with Bottas. I think it was engine.
I don't know either. Yeah, it didn't.
It was engine or gearbox. It was something. It lost power. And
it stopped.
Yeah, it basically stopped. And one of these, not the scariest moments of the weekend, but Sainz passing stupidest. Sainz passing while on the yellows. It was a very stupid moment, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, someone at his level should know better than that.
Yeah, they actually went, because he actually made the move while Bottas was stopped in the middle of the racetrack. So they were like 3 wide when one of them stopped. So it was one of those moments that when you watch old races, that you cringe. How could they allow this? And it was one of those moments.
Yeah.
So yeah, then we had a safety car, and immediately Max stops for softs. Immediately, like on the first opportunity, he stops for softs. Charles stops for softs, and Perez stops for mediums, because I think it didn't have a set of softs to put on the car.
Correct.
And for those of you that don't know the difference between a virtual safety car and a full-on safety car, the main difference is that on a virtual safety car, if you pit and then come out of the pits, the gaps more or less stay the same. When there's a full-on safety car, the whole pack bunches up, and you basically start every car one behind the other. So all the gaps that you had previously were going to go out. So that's why I think Red Bull felt the urge to just stop, and because he was going. If Mercedes didn't stop, they were going to be behind them, but
on a better tire.
On a better tire. So yeah.
100% the right move.
Yeah, 100% the right move. And then, 1 lap later, we have a masterpiece by a certain driver called George Russell. Because he made the call. It was actually him, not the team, that made the call to then 1 lap later stop for softs. And yeah, they told him at the last time, okay, stop. And he went onto the pits and stopped for softs as well, while Hamilton continued it on his 5-lap-old mediums on track. So, do we agree that because after this we had some criticism from Hamilton on the radio that it's not very usual that he's so hard on his team while in the middle of a race, but it seemed to be really a driver call and not a team call or a team strategy error. So they were both on the same strategy, but Russell said, I want softs, basically.
And he did that because of tyre warm up, and the Mercedes struggles to get heat into his tyres. So after a safety car, he knew he was going to be sitting duck, for want of a better phrase. And I think it also goes to show that Mercedes aren't running a number 2 driver for Hamilton. They're letting them race. And it again shows how well George is doing. And I'm being impressed by him with every race because he's just getting on, doing the job, and maximising. Exactly what he was doing with the Williams, but he's doing it in a slightly better car now.
Yeah, and he has still to finish a race outside of the top 5.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
from the front guys, it's with that car that in the beginning of now it's a little bit better, but in the beginning of the season was a dog of a car, absolutely dog of a car. Comparing to because Mercedes has to compare to Red Bull and Ferrari, is not going to compare to McLaren or any other cars. So for them having a dog of a car, it's a little bit different than Williams saying that they have a dog of a car. So yeah. That was a very good call.
Still on that subject, I think it goes to show how used to Hamilton is of having a Bottas or essentially a number 2 that they could say, right, no, you stay behind and try and hold up Verstappen, let Hamilton get away, which is exactly what Red Bull would do with Sergio in the situation. But I think from a viewer's point of view, from a fan's point of view, it's good to see that they're not trying to do that to George just yet and letting him actually dictate.
Yeah. So in this stop, Russell stops on lap 57. Sainz stops as well and has an unsafe release. I was basically Perez was at the same time, and he had to. The way that they set up, I don't know how. I'm not sure because I only played Sims and we don't have this on the Sims, but they set up the entry of the pit box area a little bit on the way to the pit, so slanted a little bit. And because the pits are so close on this track, if the driver that's on the pit box exactly in front of you pits at the same time and you have to get out while he's there, you have to do a very, very
very tight.
Yeah, very tight.
I don't think you can blame Sainz too much on that one because the driver's job there is to sit and watch for the light.
Oh, I'm not blaming Sainz. No, I'm not blaming Sainz.
I think, and to be fair, Ferrari, it probably was clear on a normal pit stop when he can just go. But he suddenly had to go because there was a Red Bull mechanic out in the pit, and it was just, again, I think if there's any bad luck or anything unfortunate, Ferrari are finding it.
Yeah.
Or it's finding Ferrari, and
I think unlike any other podcast, I think we here agree that Ferrari has been with a mix of mistakes, but mixed with very bad luck as well.
Yeah.
So yeah. So when we were on this safety car, so basically P6 was Hamilton on used mediums, and then it was Verstappen on new softs, Russell new softs, Leclerc new softs, Perez new mediums, and then Sainz new softs. And at this point, we had 2 question marks about Sainz because he had the unsafe release and he had the pass on the yellow flag. And in the end of the review, I actually have a question for you about that. So on lap 60, the safety car comes in, and immediately Max passes Hamilton into turn 1 and basically does the fastest lap of the race, 1:13.6. So
yeah, and that restart was 100% Lewis's fault. He just got a rubbish restart.
Completely.
Yeah, he would have been better off trundling down the straight and going as he got to the line to not give anyone a run on him, and he would have survived probably a few more corners. But going where he did, Max had the longest toe in the world.
Longest toe, the powerful engine, the sleepiest car through the straights.
New tyres.
New tires.
I don't know whether it was Hamilton was still wound up about what happened with George and him picking up. So I don't know. He got it wrong, 100%.
Yeah. And we had Sainz passing Perez and Alonso passing Norris. So it was like 2-on-2. The only one that didn't pass, but it actually went side by side, was Leclerc on Russell. So P2 passed P1, P6 passed P5, and P8 passed P7. So it was one of those. It was actually really
that's
funny.
That's the overtaking done.
Yeah. Then 2 laps later, Russell passes Lewis, and Lewis is very pissed off. It was actually a little bit sketchy, the overtake, because Lewis reacted it was, Russell even had to lift off a little bit. You actually hear the engine lifting off. So yeah, it was one of those sketchy moments. And then I think Lewis at this point was a little bit angry, and I think something switched off in his head, and that plus the tire warm-up problems that we talked about made him lose another place to Leclerc. I think if Hamilton kept his cool, I think he would be able to fend off.
Yeah.
Then Sainz, I didn't actually get this. Sainz big tag no one at this time. No one complained about tires. Basically, I think Sainz was the only one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know what's happening there, to be honest. And what do you think about the moment between Sainz and Perez? Perez trying to pass and then being squeezed out and completely on the gravel on the outside of turn 1.
Yeah, Perez ran him wide, didn't he?
No, Sainz was in front, so Sainz ran Perez wide.
It's a 6-1, half a dozen. Was he far enough ahead to fill the position? Because I don't think he got a penalty for it.
No.
I think Sainz may probably just been a bit frustrated because he's not having the best race, so maybe defended a little bit harder than he should have.
I speak of this incident because I have a bit of a problem with stewarding on this. So we had new rules for this year that consider how much alongside you have to be with the car in front, so that you have the right to have the space on the outside. Mm-hmm. So is it just completely missing the braking to go on the outside and basically compromising the whole next section of the racetrack, a fair way to gain the right to have space on the outside? I don't know. It seemed to be one of those that you just didn't brake just to be able to say that he has to have space on the outside on the exit of the corner.
Formula One and loopholes in rules. It's one of those, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's my only beef with stewarding right now. But they actually got it right, in my opinion. No penalty for Sainz. He was on the inside. He gave him space going into the corner. He was in front. It was just one of those that Perez just thought he could just
muscle his way around.
And rightly so. I think Sainz just shut the door. And at this time, we got the 5 seconds penalty for Sainz. My question about this now is, we had 2 incidents. We have a overtake under the yellow flags making it 3 wide with a stopped car in a straight with no runoff where the car was, because he was right beside the pit box. And then we had the unsafe release. Do you think that 5 seconds is enough for what happened?
The thing is, the 5 seconds was for the pit straight passing under yellows, or was it for the pit box?
I actually don't know, because they weren't clear about that.
Exactly, he got a 5-second penalty, and I can't remember which one they applied it to. I think I'm going to say they've given him a penalty for passing under yellows.
I hope it was that.
If not, they need to sack the stewards and get some new ones, because that was so dangerous.
Yeah.
Especially the fact if Bottas was sat in the car, if he had gone up the back of him, dread to think.
No, don't. We're not going to even start thinking about that, because it was
the pit lane one. I think it's unfortunate. I don't think it was an unsafe release in the sense of quick, let's get him out before they come. It was just circumstance.
Yeah, that one I kind of understand not getting the penalty, but I'll be honest, if it was me, it would get a penalty, because I think the team has a responsibility to take into account everything about the stop. They have to. They must have known that it was way harder to get out. You had a car in front, so it was one of those wrong judgment calls. But yeah, I understand.
But then also, you can't expect them to sit in their pit box and wait for the other team to finish and then go.
Yeah, but Ocon past was one of those that you normally have to do. If there's a car coming, you have to wait for the car to pass. But yeah, I understand.
The car has to be within a certain point before you let it go. So, and at the end of the day, with pit stops, you have human error.
Yeah.
So you have one man who goes, "Yep, we're good to go," or "No, we're not." So
yeah,
pressure.
Actually, with these ones, the new thing that they do is it's the guns that trigger the green light. So they have a sensor that they know that when the torque is right, and that when they all go green, you can actually see a light on the wheel guns. And when they go green, it triggers automatically, but then there's a person that has
with a manual override.
Manual override. So, yeah. But yeah, it was not one of the worst decisions. Like, I'm going to repeat myself like in the last episode. It was not one of the worst decisions of the last 2 years.
No.
So yeah, with the penalty, like on track, we went with Verstappen first, Russell second, Leclerc third, Hamilton fourth. Sainz was in fifth, but with the 5-second penalty, came way down. Then we had Perez, Alonso, Norris, Sainz with a penalty, Ocon, and Stroll in P10. So, yeah. So our only retirees, is that the word? Were Tsunoda and Bottas. And the only because of they get a wave around, so the only car that finished one lap behind was Latifi. I guess it was many others, because there were quite some cars letting by in the safety car.
Yeah.
But I guess he was 2 laps behind. So yeah, Latifi just had a stinker of a race, of a weekend, to be honest. Yeah. So okay, that's the review for the race. Can we talk just a little bit about news? Because we have a certain situation here, and I'm going to give my predictions, and I want to hear what's your thoughts on that. We had a confirmation that Mr. Oscar Piastri is going to McLaren, like we all thought, but now we know because the contract organization, I don't know how it's called, gave the right to said that the contract between Piastri and McLaren was the valid one, and that Alpine didn't have one. You actually know a lot more about the whole situation now. Everyone came out and said gave their versions at least of what happened. Because we had last week a little bit of a strange communication of Otmar Zafnauer saying that he went to Piastri, gave him the news that he was going to drive for Piastri for Alpine, and then he was smiling and all that stuff. So we now know what really happened, at least from Oscar's perspective. Basically, Otmar already knew that he wasn't going to drive for Alpine, and when he said that, he was on the simulator and he didn't want to make a scene in front of the staff. But then he went immediately after to Zafnauer's office and they talked about it, and he said he wasn't going to drive for them. So that seems a little bit sketchy. Don't know if it's true. It's one man's word against the other.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So this opens now. It means that Alpine seat is open. But now another question comes in, because we heard reports that Mr. Pierre Gasly was in talks with Alpine. But we've been hearing this for a long time. But Mr. Helmut Marko confirmed, and basically everyone that's on the grid is confirming that he's going to go there. It's just a question of announcing it. When. It's not if, it's when. So, what that opens up here is, so Haas doesn't have a seat confirmed, which is Mick's seat. We still don't know if it's really like Haas don't wanting him there. We've heard that he's the last one. The last year he's going to be with Ferrari Academy, and we have a certain German manufacturer, coming to Formula One. So you can take your conclusions there or not. We have a seat that I think is already with its bottom shape, that has currently Mr. Guan Yu Zhou in it. And we have a Williams seat, Lafitte seat, basically, that is now. And a AlphaTauri seat. So, I'm going to give my predictions and then you can say what you want. So, my prediction is that, yes, Gasly is going to Alpine. I think that's the safest one. I think that they are going to jump the gun and Mick is going to Alpha. Romeo, not Tauri, like some people are saying.
I was going to say, yeah.
Romeo. So, Sauber. It's going to be called Alfa Romeo until the end of the next year. But the team is not from Alpha. It's not Ferrari's one. They have no Ferrari driver currently there. So my thinking is
they're 75% owned.
And 70 allegedly. I don't know if we have confirmation of that, but allegedly. And then on Haas, I'm not sure. Haas is the one, and I'm not sure. I don't think Ricardo is going to go there. I think actually Ricardo might consider going to Williams. That there's been talks about that as well. He already said that he wasn't going to that he was open for whatever, and it's a team it's kind of getting their feet back together. They have money, a little bit of money now. There's even talks about some possibility of selling to a manufacturer, which I don't believe. But yeah, I actually think that Ricardo might go there. and not the F2 driver. Which one is it? It's
Drogovic, isn't it?
no.
Drogovic.
It's
There's a couple of them.
It's the one that's a Williams driver. He's a Williams Academy driver. It's the one in third place on the championship. So it's Drogovic, it's Lawson, and then there's another one. They're talking about it, but I don't really believe, because it seems not to be really in the fight. I don't know. It doesn't seem the right thing to do. I think they need
Sargent.
It's that
Logan Sargent.
Logan Sargent. I actually think Ricardo is going to go there. I don't know where they're going to get the money, or if his salary is going to go way down. I think his salary is going to go way down anyway.
I don't think he'll go there. I don't think there's enough performance for what he's going to want. And you can see how depressed he is running at the back of the grid now in a relatively good car. As improved Lando P7, him P17. I can't see it. As much as he doesn't want to leave F1, I can't see him going to Williams. I don't think he'll hang around just to stay in F1.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing that I'm seeing for him here is that Albon is doing quite well and is basically clearing his name in the process. And I think it might be helpful for Ricardo if he does better than Albon, even if it's behind. I think it will basically clear his name, or at least a little bit, because right now it's looking very, very, very bad. So yeah. For AlphaTauri, they have already. Actually, Yuki Tsunoda's city is not confirmed, and with Honda's not being really a major partner right now for Red Bull, and they actually are talking about getting back in 2026. So I really don't think that Tsunoda's seat is a done deal. Yeah, safe. So, and there's been talks about Mr. There's been talks about Herta coming, but the teams basically said that no way that we're going to let him race because he doesn't have the super license points. So,
well, that's the thing. He can't get a super license. So
can't get a super license.
Yeah.
So that's done. But there's actually, they have the Lawson on F2. He actually seems to be very good. He did a good season last year at DTM, and he's doing a good season at F2. And they are actually talking about with the other one, the Brazilian one, Drogovic.
I really rate Drogovic. I think what he's done this season, and he's currently leading the championship quite substantially. So I think someone needs to give him an opportunity, or at least get him a third driver and some testing miles.
Yeah, so that actually looks. I don't know if the 2 seats are going to be available at AlphaTauri, but an AlphaTauri with a Drogovic and William Lawson. It's William? It's Lawson. I don't know. Seem to be.
I think it's William. Yeah.
Very good pairing for next year. As sad as it will be to see Yuki go.
Yeah, and Sauber are known for putting in younger drivers and bringing them on. They've done it before. They did it with Kimi way back.
Yeah.
So it's not like, and proof with McLaren doing it now. Lando, 19 when he started. It's not as uncommon as it used to be, where you had to have one established driver and then another driver who's got 2 or 3 seasons. The new guys are proving that you can come in first year and not make a fool of yourself. Yeah.
So we might, the year that we thought was going to be straightforward seat-wise, 2022 to 2023, I think it's going to be one of the biggest revolutions on the grid in the last many years. So yeah, that's looking good, and we're going to have subject talk about the next the next weeks, because this is far from over the talks about all of this stuff. So any closing thoughts? So next race is Monza with big straights. How bad do you feel already about Ferrari?
Ferrari in Monza, the pressure is going to be huge. Never mind the pressure now of all the bad runs they're having on top of the Tifosi. Car's not fast enough in a straight line. Mercedes are pulling themselves closer and closer. Obviously, it's been better on not high speed or as high speed as Monza. So if they've sorted their porpoising enough, they'll be there or thereabouts with Ferrari, I think. Red Bull's car is undoubtedly slippery in a straight line without having to run low wing. So they're going to be fast. Williams should be good there. They were good at Spa, and they seem to get the car working super slippery. Alonso's just going to be there, isn't he? They've got the car working well, and he's been there, done it all, so he knows what to do in every situation, pretty much. Then the key one will be what McLaren can do, because they're not liking the high speed stuff for the last couple of rounds.
Yeah, the thing is, they have good straight line speed, actually. I think the problem is traction out of the corners, slow corners, while having a lower downforce car. And I think that was their problem in Spa. And now it's going to be way worse, because Monza is basically flat out and then chicane, flat out chicane.
Slow onto the straight, slow at the end of the straight. So it's how they can get around that will be. But let's not forget, they've won there last year? Danny Rick won there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they not to be discounted, but I would still probably put Alpine ahead of them in pure pace.
Yeah, so my prediction for the next week is going to be Max Perez, and then I was going to go Albon, but I'm not going to be. So I do think he's going to get a P10, top 10 finish, but I'm going to go with Alonso P3.
Okay, I think we have to go Max. It's a given. I don't want to go for Sergio because I don't think Sergio's going to be there. I think Russell again. I think Russell's going to be up there. He's going to make it happen. I'm going to will him to it. I don't know. I'm not going to have anyone in P3. I'm just going to have top two.
So you've heard here first. Everyone is going to crash apart from Verstappen and Russell, and we'll be having a big pile up, and we'll have a even worse Indianapolis 05. So, and every tifosi is going to be throwing not flares, because they don't really use flares, but they're going to throw their flags and their
pizzas
onto the track. So yeah, that was a very nice chat with you, my friend. I hope you guys took something away from this podcast. You can follow me at Pedro Barbosa SR in basically every social media platform. You can follow my friend Earl Goddard at Earl Goddard, mainly in Twitter. You can follow the show at Bump Draft Prey in every social media, and you can email us at btapodcast@gmail.com. It has been a pleasure for me. I hope you subscribe in YouTube. I always forget. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe us on your favorite podcast app. It was a pleasure. And thank you. And we'll see you next.
Cheers.